Hi there, thanks for joining us again on LokadTV for another one of our discussions. Today we're going to be talking about artificial intelligence, a subject that's been kind of a buzzword in the world of technology over the last couple of years. Today we're going to try and rise above some of that buzz and instead focus on its application and what it can do for the world of supply chains. I'm delighted to say that today I'm joined once again by Johannes Vermeerau, and he's going to help me a bit with today's discussion. So Johannes, thanks for joining us again.
Hello, Kiran.
So if we listen to some of the experts in the field, they claim that artificial intelligence is going to replace half of the jobs in the world by 2050. However, if you look at supply chains in general, they're not quite there yet. They're still very much managed by Excel spreadsheets and in a very human-driven way. So when do you think artificial intelligence will come to the supply chain industry? What sort of time frame are we talking about here?
Very interesting question. I mean, first, I really agree with your statement that artificial intelligence is a statement. And actually, I even believe that one of the ways that you can have to recognize if anybody has any clue about what they're talking about when speaking of artificial intelligence is whether they use the term artificial intelligence or not. The very competent people don't, mostly. Then being a buzzword doesn't mean that there is nothing underneath. So what do we have underneath? Because that will help us to figure out the timing. We have about three things. We have better mathematical methods, or even mathematical methods that were just there, but not really understood as being good, which is odd, but that was the essence of artificial intelligence. Then you have a second thing, which is a lot more data, because all these techniques rely on data, and nowadays we have a lot more of data readily available. And then there is the third thing, which is processing power. And then you need to have a method that can convert all this data with better mathematical methods into better results, which in supply chain translate into something like more accurate forecast. And then in terms of timing, I believe that there is a lot of angles specific to the supply chain world that needs to be addressed. And so we will maybe get back to that, but the timing for me is quite fuzzy, and in any case, it will take a lot of time. I mean, decades, literally.
Okay, so if we put aside the concerns with the terminology and say that artificial intelligence basically refers to some really advanced deep learning techniques, I mean, what can supply chain practitioners expect from some of these advanced statistical methods? I mean, they could probably expect better forecasts, but is there anything more that they can expect?
Yes, there is actually quite a lot more, and it's a strange concern, because actually I believe that one of the problems of even thinking the forecast before this wave of let's say artificial intelligence is that we didn't have much real life example of how can we think of a better forecast that is not actually a more accurate forecast, because people would say, well, by definition, a more accurate forecast is a better forecast. Yes, but is it the only way to have anything that is better? And really, artificial intelligence, or example that have been coming from this area, tells you that yes, it's a bit like you were looking at something in black and white and now you get the color. It's better, but it's not just better resolution. It's something that is another dimension. And for supply chain, I believe that the biggest benefit will come from things that actually do not look like statistical problems at all. And that's where artificial intelligence will really shine.
Okay, so to make sure I get sort of the understanding of that right, what you're saying is that there's problems that on the surface don't look like statistical problems at all, that can actually be used as a forecast of some sort in order to make it possible to use AI technology. I mean, perhaps you could expand on that a little bit more.
Yes. Last year, I had the opportunity to work on a very intriguing and interesting problem, which is car part compatibility. So in the car aftermarket, you have basically cars that need to be repaired, and for those cars, you need parts. And just to give you a sense of the problem, on the European market, you have actually several millions different parts, which is a bit insane when you think that there is only 300 million Europeans in the first place. And then you have over 100,000 distinct vehicles. And so you have an entire industry, a small industry, but an industry still, of companies that compete on one thing, establishing a database of compatibility between cars and parts. And so all those companies are doing is to build one list of which car is compatible with which part, and this is it. And this is like tens of millions of lines, and then it's entirely maintained by hand with literally hundreds of people who dedicate their life to maintain this one database. And one of the things that we did achieve at Lokad with my team, which is doing basically machine learning, you see, not artificial intelligence, machine learning. What we did is to come up with an algorithm that achieve, and we tested that on a real life setup actually, that achieve a 98% accuracy to detect that a compatibility that is claimed by a database, a real production database, is actually incorrect. So that basically it's a part that you will not succeed to mount on your car, and 98% accuracy as well to detect that actually there is a missing compatibility, so that there is a part that can actually be mounted on your car, but you just don't know it yet, or nobody knows it, because, well, it's so many cars, so many parts, it's very hard to see everything.
Okay. I mean, using artificial intelligence in order to work out if a car part is compatible with my vehicle seems a little bit overkill and a little bit over the top, no? I mean, I'd have thought that a simple catalogue might work for that, or an off-the-shelf basic solution. But what about supply chains in general? Like, what can artificial intelligence do for them?
Yes. So the point that I wanted to illustrate is that most of the challenges in supply chains are actually lying in the edge cases. You know, you have plenty of situations that are usually working, but then you have edge cases. And those edge cases actually, they don't get solved by themselves. What it takes to solve those edge cases is people, and a lot of it, literally tons of it. And then you end up with entire armies of people who are doing basically Excel tweaks. I mean, they are, because the way you can actually, if you pay attention, notice that there is so many people that are dealing with those edge cases in supply chains, is that you have so many people who are actually editing Excel sheets. And what are they doing with those Excel sheets? They're not wasting their time. They are dealing with the edge cases, all the sort of situation that do not really fit into the main ERP system, and so they need to go back to the Excel sheet and deal with it. So technically, whenever you see people who have to manually deal with tons of edge cases, and typically that involve Microsoft Excel, then this is a problem that most likely something that I would prefer not to call artificial intelligence, but that would be artificial intelligence will solve ultimately.
Okay, so having AI detect some of these edge cases sounds like a pretty fantastic idea, really. I mean, it would certainly go a long way to solve some of the problems that we see here at Lokad, such as that result in things like delays and accidental stockouts. But what would this actually look like in practice? Would it be something like Siri or Cortana, you know, like a voice in the operator's ear that sort of tells them what to do and when to do it? How would it work?
Yeah, the idea of having, your phone that in the middle of the warehouse say, look left, you have a problem. I mean, it's pure science fiction. I mean, the idea of, those consumer grade artificial intelligence, they are more like a series of heavily specialized micro use case, actually. Like the people who did implement probably Cortana and Siri, they have like a special use case for ordering a pizza. And so they actually build a lot of code, and just to make it sufficiently flexible so that it works pretty much everywhere in the world, so that you can order a pizza anywhere in the world, is actually quite a success, and it's very, very difficult. But you see, it's all about very narrow use cases, and those assistants are nothing but a collection of use cases that are well integrated. So for supply chain, it will be pretty much the same, except that you probably don't want to have something giving you instruction from, I would say, over the voice, because it's a bit inefficient. But let's go back to the sort of things where the micro use cases that artificial intelligence is maybe going to solve. First, you're going to get forecasts for all the areas where there is uncertainty. And demand forecast, future demand is not the only thing that is uncertain in your supply chain. You have many other things, such as, for example, lead times. Your suppliers are not perfectly reliable. You know it. You just don't know exactly the sort of unreliability they have. You just know they are there. Artificial intelligence can give you a very accurate probabilistic forecast on the problems that your suppliers will generate. And by the way, the delays are not the only kind of problems that your suppliers can generate. Maybe your supplier will actually send you the goods that you've ordered on time, but then when they land into your own warehouse, you inspect them, and then you detect that there is some quality problem. So it's not just the delay, it's maybe also the quality of what you received. And then if you happen to be, let's say, a fashion e-commerce, you sell products to your own customers, and sometimes, well, this is fashion, they just don't like it. So what they do is they are going to return those products to you. And knowing in advance how many people and which one will actually have a big chance to return things to you is something of high interest for the optimization of your supply chain. So you see, there are tons of areas where you have uncertainty. Maybe not as big as the core uncertainty, which is where is the future demand, but still you need to address that, and that's exactly, I think, where those future technologies based on AI will actually deliver for supply chain.
Okay, so let's sort of move on to sort of the human supervision sort of side of things, because these AI technologies won't be able to work on their own. So how much AI expertise is actually going to be needed to make a project like this work? I mean, companies such as Google might have the resources to be able to employ small armies of AI experts. But what about the rest of us? I mean, you mentioned there fashion e-commerce companies. Like e-commerce companies tend to be quite ahead of the trends when it comes to technology, but they might not have AI experts in their ranks. So how can you see it actually working in the real world?
So, I mean, first, the very, very best fashion company that I know, e-commerce, they do have AI experts in their ranks, but let's say it's like an outlier. But no, back to the question is, yes, indeed, I believe that the core of the answer is no. Supply chain companies or companies who have a supply chain to operate, they don't need AI experts. They need something else. I will get back to that. And by the way, that will also give a more, I would say, interesting answer to the timing question that was, the very first question. So you don't need an AI expert. Why? Because the AI component can be completely outsourced to a company like Lokad. That's very good. Just if you have any concern about AI, you just have one thing, is just to become a client of Lokad. You've just outsourced your AI component to us. Good, that scaled very nicely. So now let's get back to the things that do not scale, and that's where the timing angle really is. I believe that the problem with AI is that it forces companies to enter, to become more rational in a way, and also to remove all sorts of things that were kind of ambiguous and part of the status quo. So, and that's exactly what I'm talking about when I have a book on quantitative supply chain. It's all these perspectives that if you want to have any hope of delivering any kind of optimization, first you need to come up with a measurement. So measurement is difficult, and the problem is that it's very difficult because it challenges the status quo. And so that gets me to the real difficulty of those companies, that how are they going to improve on leveraging AI, is that they will need to change the status quo. And this can get into very specific sort of form of maybe, let's say, infighting if that goes bad. I mean, maybe that's also something that is interesting to explore.
Yeah. Well, I can only really sympathise, because it sort of sounds like there's certain companies out there that could have AI as a very realistic prospect. And I can really only sympathise with those members of staff who are going to have their jobs replaced by these so-called intelligent systems. I mean, how long is it going to be before we have a new artificially intelligent presenter here on LokadTV? But no, in all seriousness, is this not a factor that we think might block or slow down the adoption of the technology? I mean, we've got plenty of clients here at Lokad. If we qualify for a new artificially intelligent model? How can you see it working with your customers?
Yeah, that's a very, very good point. And I think it's the fear is valid, but typically what people expect that will happen is, I believe, usually incorrect. So first, if you read the press, what you will read is, oh, those jobs are going to be replaced, people are going to object. And the answer is in supply chain, no. Why? Because the jobs that are being replaced are terrible. They are like the worst kind of job ever. Imagine committing yourself to a job where you will spend your life, and I say your life, 8 hours a day, to edit Excel sheets. This is like soul damaging job. I mean, people are usually quite happy when that can finally happen because they will be able to do, a better version of their job that actually make more sense without to have to do so much of, I would say, Excel nonsense. But it doesn't mean that there will be no infighting. That's just what I was kind of hinting. But the infighting will happen at a completely different level, at a corporate level. And let me just give you one example of that. I actually experienced a very interesting situation. Imagine you're a retail network, so you have stores. And the question is, what about the inventory you have in every store? Well, it's on the surface, you would say, well, all products that are in those stores, they only exist to be sold to the customers. But it's not entirely true. Actually, the inventory within a store, it serves not one, but two purposes. Purpose number one is indeed there is a client that walks into the store and this client can find something to buy and he or she can just buy the product he wants or she wants. But there is also the purpose number two is that when this person enters the stores, the stores is appealing enough so that this person is willing to buy something. You see, that's and this problem is the very reason why all those stores are so full of stuff. Is it because if they are not full of stuff, if they are half empty, they look like a store from the USSR that looks like this is so not such a place. I don't want to buy anything from this place. And here people know that. I mean, any people in retail would say, yeah, obviously this is what facing is about. So now. Let's see what artificial intelligence will tell you. The artificial intelligence, because it's a very precise thing that can be so stupidly precise that it will give you the answer even when you don't want the answer. It will give you two answers. It will tell you, first, how many units of stock do you need to serve your client? That's a first quantity. And then it will tell you how many units do you need to make your store appealing to customers. And now, if you at the corporate level, if you think about it, it means that who is going to pay for those two stocks? I mean, supply chain is obviously going to pay for the stock, the inventories that people need. But who is going to pay for the stock that is not needed except to generate the willingness to buy? That's marketing. That's like paying for an ad on TV. You have to do it. It doesn't do anything but generate the demand. So it's marketing. But you see where I'm getting at? You push AI in your retail chain, and what happens is that suddenly it redefines the line between supply chain and marketing, and people are not going to be happy about that, especially, I suspect, the marketing director who suddenly has like hundreds of millions of euros of budget that are jumping into his budget for the first time in his life. Say, no, supply chain guys, please keep that. I was just fine having only TV ads part of my budget. And then suddenly there are people who say, no, now you're going to be involved in the stock because actually the stock is a marketing thing. So you see, this is exactly the sort of things where it will take time because you can't expect companies to wrap their head around this sort of angles quickly. Deploying software can happen overnight. Sorting those things will take decades.
Yeah. Okay, well, I'm afraid that's all we've kind of got time for today. Thanks for a really interesting discussion again. It's very wide-ranging. We've started with artificial intelligence. We end up talking about stores in the USSR. I mean, that's the way these things go. But no, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Kiran.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So I hope that sort of cleared up some of the common misconceptions that are out there with regards to artificial intelligence. Thanks for tuning in and also for the great feedback we've had on our videos so far. We'll be back very soon, but until then, bye-bye.